Do you wish you would buy your own computer?
Oh yeah. This is like, this is a pretty loaded Chromebook. So this is actually cheap. $700 Chromebook. I could have bought the tank. But
You could have bought a really nice one.
I could have bought whatever. I mean, I chose to do this. Not.
I really wish this day you were like, why did I do this?
It's awesome.
It hasn't very used.
Yeah. Not a fan. I will never do this again. Some part of me thinks that I might take it home and see if I can get Linux on it. Or Unix. I don't care what one.
Well, it's thin enough, you might be able to slide it underneath your table to the wall.
Yeah.
So you just prop it up.
You can just see it is actually.
That's not really long battery life. Although I understand that if you do install other stuff, don't expect to get that battery life kills it. And it's really lightweight.
Well, the best part is you know, they can just track every piece what you do, and they know everything about you. It's just awesome. You know, because I used to think, you know, my computer crash and have a organization like that. Now it's
Yes. Well, no, you don't even have to worry about that because they don't let you actually put stuff on here. It all stores on people first. So you don't even have to do that.
So. Just do his slides, but
We really have the bodies the church sauce.
oh, so you didn't.
This one. Refresh. Should be able to get
I don't want to download it.
no, yeah, yeah.
Oh, sure. Okay, I never get there this way. It hasn't run for me yet. Yeah, it takes a while to get from that way. So let's do. Go back to my. I'm sorry, excuse me. No, there was.
You're stealing your pen?
Because that's what I really need is another pen.
We need a note taker and a jabber scribe. Volunteers before we attempt voluntold.
Can I do Etherpad?
I would love for you to do Etherpad.
Etherpad technology.
It seems to be up right now, so yes.
So I'll do second.
That's actually, I mean,
All very widely traded capital.
Alright, well,
it's all too believable at this point, actually. I said that's all too believable at this point.
alright, so, uh-oh. Cannot get SACM.
SACM has been disbanded.
Etherpad/P/SACM. Oh, okay, not scam. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, thank you. No, I.
Wow, this thing is live.
That's scam. All the correct is scam.
I can get through it. Did you get it, Nancy? So you can just click on the link in the agenda. I did that and it worked.
Okay. Now I'm in SACM, but I can't like create an individual file.
Are you in the one that's linked off of?
Let me, sorry, let me continue.
In the meantime, while she's doing that, we'll go ahead and get started. This is the SACM working group meeting. Where's the? No, you had it, but we just need to. So we have a note taker, we have an ether scribe, a Jabber scribe. Wow, it is so the last meeting. Last meeting of the week, yes. Did you find it, Nancy?
Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So let's get going. This is the note well that you will have acknowledged when you registered, and that applies to this meeting as well as others. This is our agenda for the day. A number of these will be really short status updates. Our objective here is, in particular for all of the working group documents, to be sure that we have sort of a next step outlined for each of those. Is there any agenda bashing? No? All right. So, our first item was the Rolly software descriptor. We were not sure if Stephen was going to make it to this call. We should shout out to give him. Should we?
Yeah.
So Stephen is not here, and Dave Altemeyer are not here because Stephen is getting married, and he said it was on Friday, right? So it's today.
No, it's 2 days from today.
Yeah. So Friday is. In any event, he's getting married, and while he was originally optimistic that he would have lots of spare time, we were skeptical. So anyway, there's a small update that he wants to make, and then it should be ready for working group last call. And I think the MIME type issue has been clarified, and that just needs to be rolled back into the document. So we should be ready to go. The next item on the agenda is architecture. We also heard from Adam, who's not here. There was an update to that document, I believe, in September. September, excellent. So we don't really have anything more beyond that, except we would really like people to read that and comment on it. And probably at the next virtual interim, we'll see if we can have some substantive conversations on the next step for that document. Terminology, I don't know if you want to say.
Hi, this is Henk on a concise update regarding terminology. Pending the adoption of the current architecture document, we are postponing major refactoring of the terminology because it would not make sense if we are changing a core concept, which I hope we don't. So I would reinforce Karen's recommendation to read, please, the current version of the architecture and maybe even remember how the old one looked like, or dig it up from the archive because it's expired, and then assess if this is addressing what you need. It is more concrete. It has very specific component roles in it. And terminology-wise, we are still on the modular role concept that was initially proposed. So this is easy to specialize a generic term. It's hard to generalize a specific term. So I think that there's not a big challenge to adopt the terminology document to the architecture. But maybe we want to stay a little bit extensible. And that, again, I have not really read about in the architecture yet. So that is the most important part where terminology comes in, because if you want to extend something, you have to know why and where and how the semantics are placed. So that is, I think, my request added to the review of the architecture. If you're not satisfied with the semantics there, like I don't know what's assessed here, and I don't know what the outcome is, and I don't know what the workflow should look like, that is a fundamental issue with an architecture document, and please highlight that. And maybe have a look at the terminology. There are some description of that, so maybe some of that could go back into that document, I think. Yeah, that's my concise update on terminology.
Okay, so my concise summary of what you just said is we should, terminology will be revisited in more depth once we get it, once we talk about architecture.
Yeah, we have to, be sure that's the way we want to go.
Right.
That's basically it, yes.
Okay. And you can just stay there because COSUR's next.
The slides are just in time, but yeah, there they are. So we created an update. This is now about concise software identifiers, a basis for the evaluation of target endpoints, because they are, at least semantically, one half of it is software. The other half, so to speak, is hardware components. And we want to use the concise software identifiers to identify the software inventory and its characteristics and semantic interconnectedness via concise software identifiers. Next slide. And actually, we are preparing for working group last call. There's only one remaining issue. There are 3 issues open. 2 of them are only open for final review. So if anyone has a problem with me closing it, speak out in the next week. Otherwise, I will actually really close them. The remaining issue is a very specific representation of media that is originating from ISO spec text, which is, let's say, open-ended, and nobody really could explain to me what the effective purpose is. So I included an example of how this is phrased at the moment. So there are expressions and they interact with other expressions, and there are ABPs associated with it. So I guess it's a conditional language. It was relatively easy to convert that to CDDL. Next slide, please. So that's the CDDL representation of the media attribute for concise software identifiers. I guess nobody who's really ever read that ISO draft or is familiar with how semantics of software components work will make no sense of this. And so in essence, it is up to the authors to vet this validity. That's the only remaining issue here. And yeah, so this is just to show how a structured version of this looks like. Next slide, please. And yeah, in order to, sorry?
So has anyone looked at the most recent draft of this with this language? No? Okay.
Yeah, it's also the media is hard to parse. I really accept that. Even in the original ISO document, it's hard to get what this is about. So for doing working group last call, there are, as you can see, some tiny details you have to do. So we are registering the actual version schema that is in the IANA considerations. We proposed a entity role registry. I gave examples here. So tags, software tags, I have a creator of the tag itself, of the software itself. So it's a semantic to software components that are entities. We want to have a registry for that. We also want to have a registry for the semantic interconnectedness of software components. Again, here, some software requires other software or recommends other software or supersedes it, patches it, etc., etc. So this is another type of semantic interconnectedness that are links. There is an existing one that is semantically different. So I think the IANA will grant us a separate registry, but it's up to IANA, I think, and will be IANA discussion. And then there are the very obvious ones. We are creating a media type here because we want to convey it via HTTP, for example, with Rowley. We are creating a corresponding COAP content format registry entry, which is SWIT plus CBOR. There is a interesting problem here because SWIT plus XML has to be semantically equivalent and therefore bidirectionally translatable from CBOR to XML and vice versa. If that is not the case, we cannot call it SWIT plus CBOR, but have to call it co-SWIT. The plus implies absolute semantic equivalence that we made sure to make this, provide the basis for this by cutting out every extension that is not mentioned in the ISO spec. For example, we had appendix about firmware representation. The ISO does not have anything like that. We just added an extension point for other resource collections and will do firmware in another draft. We covered this in Suite. We hope that the manifest of the Suite working group will be a feasible resource collection type for this. And if that happens, we have high synergy with the Suite working group. So that's my actual hope here. In any case, we are starting with SWIT plus CBOR in order to test this. And if it's not possible, we will go with co-SWIT. Same goes for the COAP content format, which requires a media type registration. It's a precondition, prerequisite, so to speak. And it is, again, then for COAP applications with plus CBOR. And we have a explicit CBOR data item that is the concise software identifier. And you need a magic number for that to identify this. So everybody who can, from the top of the head, translate ASCII integer representation of hex will see that this magic number means SWIT. And is pointing to a map construct, and it will define the semantics of a concise software identifier. So these three last items are standard registrations, and the three firsts are only for registry. So this is actually a lot of IANA considerations, but all of them are feasible. And then we have reusable semantics for other work in this domain. Because some software, especially firmware, might require specific hardware to run on. And so there is reuse value in this. Next slide, please. And that's basically it. So we are going with the final version after 08, which hopefully 09 will be the candidate for working group last call. And my request to the chairs is that we, if we are indicating that we are done, that we will request on the list start of working group last call and proceed from there. And yeah, then if anybody has questions or comments about this process or what I just said, please speak out. At the moment, the chairs are discussing, so I'm waiting for that.
We're having a private meeting.
I know, but if anybody listens, it is not the case, but still.
Well, no, actually, we were discussing whether we needed more review before we did the working group last call, but I think it's been around for a while, so maybe have the review.
Yeah, we involved everybody who is familiar with the ISO specification for software identifier attacks. And we got no negative feedback. We got a few comments on how to structure some of the values, which is basically the basis for this was there was only textual definition. There was no real tables for that. It was implicitly captured in a specification text. So English text always leaves room for interpretation. So that was the only place where we had to be really careful. I think all of that was covered by Dave in a final polish and inquiry by him. But I think Dave should comment on this, so I will ask him to give a comment on the list on this. And then, yes, I would affirm your assumption, but I can only be really sure that it has been reviewed by the ISO spec authors if Dave says it has happened.
Okay, so to repeat what I think I heard, we have an updated draft. You have one more issue, and you want to get, and in addition to that, you want to get Dave to confirm that the ISO folks have read this.
Yeah.
So there'll be one more update.
Yeah.
And then we can go to working group last call.
This is my plan and assumption, yes.
Okay. Do we have a rough timeline for that next update?
I think it is very possible to do this year, but speaking from experience, there was some latency in the recent past. So, but still, effectively, this are like 4 working days.
Okay, so, thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. I was just curious what was in your head about what you were expecting.
No, I think all in all, worst case scenario, it's like 4 times 8 hours, and then we're done with this.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you all.
Any questions? Oh, I guess I didn't actually. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry.
I have an extensive question for clarification. Does this model or this kind of schema, can this kind of thing be used by network device, or it's only for the PC and the software system, software management, right?
A more complex network device deploys let's call it a firmware blob. But if you're looking at it closely, it's a file system with a lot of files in it. And recently, modern network equipment basically is a Linux running a lot of software. So the more modern items, the more bigger items you see, the more applicable it is, the smaller they get, and the more it's actual firmware without multitasking and specific firmware parts will require the resource extension that will be crafted in suit. So my answer is yes, you can use this, and for most bigger devices that are from network vendors like switches and routers and emerging but bigger things that are running on Linux, most certainly, even the proprietary software that is using a file system, that is a prerequisite for users code with, can use this format already, this model. But if you're going down to the level to bootloader firmware, nothing else, we have to wait for the output of the suite working group, but they are working relatively fast, I think. So next year there might be a tangible manifest, and they even acknowledged that this is converging with a concise software identifier. It is even already mentioned in the data manifest written by Brandon today. So next year there will be, with an additional draft, also small components like IoT devices down to class 1 be able to represent it via this SWIFT model.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's so I'm more interested. Maybe I can do a round review for the
Sure.
version. Yeah.
That would be great. I'm done.
Okay, well,
Okay, thank you.
then you're excused.
Dismissed.
Dismissed.
I heard this today, but not.
ECP. Oh, ECP, that was it. So Hank, I'm sorry, I wasn't actually paying. There was actually one more item on the agenda. I just wanted you to give us a quick on the ECP. What's next for it?
Okay, sorry. This is Hank from the floor. How should I know? I am not an author.
Why did we put him? Oh,
Maybe I just got that wrong.
The endpoint compliance profile is. I'm so again? Yeah.
we just confused ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I not
That's
jumped
bad
up there.
record keeping by the chair.
I'm staying here on the floor.
Preparing the agenda.
Put that in the notes, don't worry.
Okay, so with that,
I'll actually
it's really funny, I didn't even double check.
Hi everyone, I'm Wei Pan from Huawei. Today I want to introduce the updates of our draft, the data model of network infrastructure device data plan security baseline. And the first is a quick recap. The purpose of our draft is trying to define a minimum set of configuration and the status parameters of the security related functions and the service on our network infrastructure device. And this configuration and the status can be collected by the SACM collector and consumed by SACM evaluator. And so the security postures of this security of the network devices can be recorded and evaluated. In general, the security baseline can be divided into three layers, the application layer, the network layer, and the infrastructure layer. And the network layer can be also divided into three plans, the control plan, the data plan, and the management plan. In our draft is about the data plan security baseline. And the updates of our from version 2 to version 3 is mainly focused on the data modification of the data model structure. In the new version, we reorganized the data model structure of the security functions in a classified way. The security function can be classified to several sub-security functions, and each sub-security function is consist of several configurations and status which have the same feature and are closely related. Example, here is a layer 2 protection function, and it was classified to MAC limit function and the traffic surprise function. And the MAC limit function is consist of VLAN MAC limit, interface MAC limit, and etc. The MAC limit, the VLAN MAC limit and the interface MAC limit can also configure the maximum of MAC entries, the rate of MAC learning, and some other functions. But the difference is the key. The MAC limit, the VLAN MAC limiter is based on the VLAN ID, and the interface MAC limiter is based on the interface name. And the traffic surprise is similar. Here are two examples. The first example is the layer 2 protection. The difference is as below. The left hand is the in the previous version. You can see all nodes are all under the MAC limit node, and it is less organized. The right hand is a new version, as I just introduced. It looks much better. The second sample is a DHCP snooping function. It also has a similar modification. In the left hand, the before, you can see the sub function is under the configuration level nodes, and after modification, I leveled up all the sub function, and so if you want to add, delete, or modify a sub function, other sub function will not be affected. About the future work, we will continue optimizing the date model and complete the YANG modules. We also seek more comments and co-authors. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? How many people have read this draft?
Reading would be overstating it, but I'm following them because they are YANG modules, and I have a comment on this. So in NetConf, finally, maybe a little bit too late, but finally the event notification, this subscribe notification, and the YANG push are drafts will become working group last call. And then this information, because it is based on YANG data store structures, could be used to create YANG telemetry. So that would eliminate the need to pull these. Some of these are writable, but if they are providing information on a regular basis and are prone to changes in periodic or sporadic manners, then you can subscribe to specific subtrees of the module and have this as message bundles pushed to your SACM collector, and that eliminates the need to overhead of periodic pulse, which is a nice feature, I think. And if you have something really important to communicate, you can even create specific notification statements in the YANG module to have stuff that you always want a collector to subscribe to. The data tree module can be big. It can be used for configuration, for intent, and all other flavors that NMDA provides. But the notification statements are very specific subsets of information you can hard code into the module that are most certainly intended to be telemetry sent to the SACM collector. And that could be of use to all modules written in YANG. This is not this comment is not limited to this specific set of YANG modules. It's basically a good thing for every SACM related YANG module.
Hank, just for your comments, I need a little clarification. You mean that yeah, we know that NetConf YANG has defined this very new subpub and push mechanism, and it is almost be published. Yes, we also want to reuse them, because I remember in the very beginning of this draft, of this series of draft, our very initial idea is that if it's only about the security status and the configuration collection, actually the YANG push pub mechanism is the most suitable for us. So of course we are learning of the new mechanism, and I think in the future version of the draft, we can use that. We can change our document to align to that mechanism based on that mechanism. But I'm not very clear. What do you mean? The content here is not useful or something? Have you mean this?
No. Not all. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not if there's some configuration subtrees there. They were writable, so it does not make a lot of sense to get something pushed to you on change that you just wrote yourself into the tree. Okay. That does not. In most cases, it does not make much sense to, if you do a update to a tree. If you write something into a node, then if you subscribe to that node, you will get telemetry that you just wrote that, but you know because you just wrote it. So the subscription to the trees are typically filtered either by subtree expressions, which would not be enough for complex writable node structures, or via XPath filters. And XPath filters would be, in this case, required if depending on how you structure the tree. If you have one half of the tree is about configuration settings, and another part of the branch of the tree would be read-only, then you could do a subtree subscription to all of that. If you just want specific parts of that, like, I don't know, my certificate changed on the data plane, I got a port disabled or a flapping event or something like that, then I would subscribe to those nodes specifically via separate subscriptions or method bundle subscriptions, and then that get to you pushed on change, for example. So it is not feasible to subscribe to a complete tree if there are writable nodes in there, because typically you use these nodes to set settings, and you know that you're just doing that. So it would create arbitrary telemetry that is not useful to and would just create volume. And I think volume and scaling that down is a big feature.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you. I got your point, but I just want to say that although our initial idea is that we just want to specify the security status and the changes to make them as a telemetry and collector and monitoring the device, network device security status. But in fact, in current draft, maybe it's our fault, or we haven't clearly differentiate what part is configuration part and what part is telemetry or the status part. Actually, they are together there in our draft. But those content or those model are we think are useful or valid because they all about the network devices security configuration and the security status. So I think the problem for us to be solved is that maybe we should differentiate them very clearly. And the configuration is configuration, and the status monitoring is status monitoring. So for the status monitoring part, I think we should follow the netconf push mechanism and take them as the telemetry and collect them. But I still think that the left configuration part is also useful. But I'm not sure whether it should be here or it should be net mode or netconf working group. Yes, that's a question always there. So yeah, we want to hear more advice about it from working group chair or from any guys.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, I got the question,
Okay.
and I think there's some conversation about where do new Yang models belong at this point.
Yeah.
Which one is it? It's
Hello, Jessica from Huawei. I'm going to present the recent updates for security baseline draft of network device management plan. So first, Jessica from Huawei. Jessica. Thank you. And so first, a brief recap. This draft defines a minimal set of security controls and status that are widely used in current network devices, and these configurations and status can be used for network device security posture assessment. And we define the content into 5 parts: administration security, system management security, port security, log security, and file security. And as for the updates since the last IETF meeting, for the whole content, we removed the content that try to cover legacy issues and only focused on the recommended secure protocols. And thanks for the comments and suggestions in the mailing list. And for this version, we mainly updated the administration security part and system management security part. For these 2 parts, we reused the young models that defined in the existing RFCs or drafts, but we make some modifications or do some tolerations of the young module. Because the collection of the security posture and the device configuration is different, and so we removed some parts that configuring the key materials, such kind of thing, because we do not use the this content when we collect the device security posture. And the other updates is about updating the corresponding young modules and the editorial updates. So for our next steps, we will update the remaining part of this draft and also discuss with other vendors to refine this data model. So your comments are warmly welcome. Thank you.
Any questions for Jessica?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Did INT security, we never got slides for that. So do you have that? So we received a request from the automated IoT security folks, but we never actually got slides. Are they here? Is there somebody here to address this? Okay, maybe that's why we never got the slides. No, it was no. It was a specific. Yeah, we didn't put the full text on the agenda, but I mean on this, but it's.
It was about, if I'm not mistaken, it was about the vehicle automated with compressed paths for certificate chains.
Who is the author?
Hold on 1 second. We have
What's
it
the relatives to SAC?
Automation.
What's the relatives?
So in any event, there was a request, but a couple weeks ago we put it on the agenda, but they're not here and we haven't received slides. So if you look on the agenda page, the posted agenda, not our shortened slide version, it has the link to the document. So I think the relevance to SACM was uncertain, and but in any event, they requested agenda time. We gave it to them. and they're not here, so that's okay. So I wanted to go back very briefly to ECP because I sort of, I did actually get a quick update, and we just weren't, we both lost it here. So in any event, we did follow up with Danny about what the status of ECP was, and he does have some changes that he wants to post with respect to terminology as well as to integrate some of Adam's text. He's looking to do another round of updates and another round of review, and then see where we go next. So we did our homework. We just forgot our homework. So at this point, we're at the any other business part of the agenda. And oh, Brett, we thought we would put you on the spot. You did a little bit of work at the hackathon. We just wanted to hear a tiny bit about it. And this might be rumor if you.
Hi. Yes, so I created a SACM and Friends table, and I actually did some work on Rolly, so which isn't really.
You don't.
Yeah.
So you did a SACM and Friends table, and
I was the only one there because no one else came this time, so I felt really lonely, and so I didn't have any friends. And then a couple other people came, and we talked about other stuff, and worked on some of the DTN pieces. But I worked on some Rolly pieces.
Okay, we were just at a little bit later. We're going to ask about. I think the previous hackathons have done a nice job of helping focus and move SACM work forward. And so I was just trying to keep that. Since I wasn't I didn't even go into the room this time. So
yeah, literally I was by myself on my own table, and so I put SACM and then Friends and then please come and Friends, and no one came. So
well, thank you. You don't even have to minute that, Nancy. I just was. And apologies for putting you on the spot. We just we knew that you had done something related to SACM, and we were right. Yeah, and it's deeply appreciated. Help is always deeply appreciated. So, is there any other business? All right. So way ahead. Yeah, step away from the keyboard.
I did just want to acknowledge that. So I just did want to acknowledge that in the MILE working group, the XMPP grid is submitted to IESG. Yep. Yay!
Thank you, Taki-san.
It's almost like you guys are doing a wave back there.
It's a late reaction.
Last meeting.
All right.
All right. These way ahead. These are the items that are listed in our charter still, which so we could probably do some updates on there. But so we have working group last call on COSWID, which I actually feel like we're getting close. I've gone through the last draft. There doesn't seem to be that much missing. I think ECP. I haven't kept up with the rate of change for Danny's production, so I need to do more reading there. But hopefully, folks can do some more reading there. I'd like more reviewers. Obviously, Danny's going to do some more changes. But then we get into things that I think are a bit more fuzzy. Well, Rolly software descriptors, I think. We were, according to Stephen, and I've read that. We've just been waiting for that IANA media type registration. I think that's done, so I think we can cross that off. So that gives us architecture, and then as we look further down the list, things that I'm not so sure about at this point where we stand. I see some puzzled looks in the room, but we'd really like some input from the room as to, what are you guys thinking about this list? Who's willing to contribute what? Where do we stand?
Okay, this is Hank. Talking about Yang push. We once had an information model. And without... Sorry, it is expired. So without that, we don't have the information elements to construct the envelope for a standard Yang push notification statement that would then be able to incorporate everything we define for Yang models or find interesting from other Yang models to be pushed via static notifications for SACM. And so if we want to go ahead with that, either we do a arbitrary data model, so to speak, via the Yang modeling language, or we go back to the information model and fix that up first before personally, I like the formal flow of having the information elements first and then going with the data model, but that's stalled. So that's my comment on the last item. But also there was a other, let's call it blocker, and there was a hard delay on working group last call in NetConf. So this is finally out of the way. So giving that I have time again at some point in my life, I could start a data model without an information model, and then we can do it the other way around. But I cannot give guarantees how far this work will go before the next meeting. Some.
Yeah, we weren't really looking for guarantees. We were just looking for some discussion on charter items that we're...
The idea is that Yang has so much semantics defined. There's so many things out there that are defined by Yang models, and some of them are interesting to SACM to be SACM telemetry. And if we have the SACM statement concept defined in the information head, in the information model. So if we have a standard notification envelope, like and there comes other complementary work like the bundled messages structure that I'm a co-author of in NetConf. And with that structure, we can create a standard SACM envelope with metadata in it, like this changed at that point, this is relevant to this device, this is relevant to this post-process, etc., etc., if the device knows this, or just keep this empty and make a relatively raw telemetry output. It's up to, we have a very scalable envelope for notifications specifically tied to SACM. It would be an augment to the message bundle definition that will be produced in NetConf. And via this augment, we would be able to use literally every existing Yang module on a device to get SACM tailored telemetry based on Yang modules. That is the core concept of the Yang push transfer mechanism that I personally, as a potential author that hasn't even done a 0.0 draft yet, envisioned. So that would simplify a lot of stuff for, I think it's called Panic, because there's our network equipment devices, and those have the models. And models are developed for that, and models are there also a lot of, so we can make use of those via that generic SACM glue draft.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I hear good news. Hank, would you just write your data model draft quickly? I think we can help you. Yeah, that can be a good container for I think at least for our information in your envelope, and we can work on this direction. Actually, I want to say that we have updated our security network device security posture data model draft for several versions. If you look at those drafts, actually the content in those drafts is relatively stable, and we have some kind of we have some certain of confidence that those include some useful information for the network devices security. So we really want to this kind of information can be used by the industry. So, but yes, we can't find a good way to push it. So yeah, I think so. Maybe later, if we really start our SACM data model work, we want to contribute for it.
Okay.
Just take the screen privacy up. Nancy Camwinja. So the reason why I was looking puzzled is, did we already agree that we're going to adopt a Yang push, or is this a request, or?
During the so there's nothing in there that's agreed. It's just as we agreed on the charter text. It's in the recharter.
Oh, in the recharter. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Yang would be a good place to start from a data model. You're not gonna like this. I said Yang is a good place to start for a data model, right? So I can help work on that. So in the interest of time and moving forward, I know you would like to see an information model. I just don't know that that will be as fruitful. Just saying.
Okay, so I think this gives us a little bit of information. If everybody wants to take a quick look at that list of milestones, I think part of this is working group chairs this week. We're talking about whether or not we should update our milestones, and all of and this working group is not alone in this, but all of our milestones are out of date at this point. I do think we are making progress, and we have some things that are coming down the pike, so that's great. Anyway, way forward. There is a lot of time between now and the next IETF, and so we're looking at potentially 3 virtual interims. They may not be like full 2 hours. They might be like 1-hour meetings, depending on what the agenda is. These are the proposed weeks that we have. I don't know if anybody has any big conflicts with those weeks. We'll send out doodle polls for days within the weeks and times, but that's our current plan. Again, I don't think we're alone in this as a working group, but we seem to make more progress when we have more frequent meetings, and so I think that would be a good thing. Any comments or questions on that? And the second thing is that we were looking for, I also think that the effort in the hackathon has helped focus the working group. And so we are, again, a number of the people that are regular participants in that are not here. But we were interested in those of you who are regular participants in the hackathon, maybe starting some conversations about what kinds of things you might be willing to collaborate on in the context of IETF 104.
I personally think it would be really interesting to see if we could build a SWID to co-SWID converter to kind of check that data model. Oh, all right, maybe we have something.
I heard there's running code.
There is.
Yes. capable of creating both CodeSwid and SWIDs. But
Did you
I have
hear
to
this from
check with
Dave?
Dave how far his code is. Yes.
Hi, Brett Jordan. For the next hackathon, I don't know if I will be working on SACM or Miles stuff because I'll probably be working on my Cacao course of action playbook stuff. So just to keep in mind.
Right. This is definitely not.
I'm just letting you know my availability.
Yes, thank you. I think, I mean, we've done it a couple different ways. The first time we did it, Adam, put together a rough plan of what they wanted to try and accomplish, and a lot of work went into coordinating in advance. And then I think after that, people showed up and worked on what they were working on. So I don't have an opinion on which way we want to do that. I just, if we want something that requires a little bit more coordination, we probably want to start thinking about it. And this was just to sort of put a bug in people's ear, not to do any planning here by any stretch of the imagination. But go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, Brett Jordan. Just a procedural element for the working group. More virtual meetings or planning sessions and doing things for hackathons or doing for works is a forcing function. If we know that we're going to be having a call or a WebEx or something and someone's going to call us on the carpet to see how far along we are, it is a forcing function. And so it does help focus and drive work and innovation because it's not out of sight, out of mind until the next meeting. And then it's 2 weeks before and you're, oh my gosh, what did I say I was going to do and I haven't done yet. And so as a general rule, I think that it would be great, for working groups across the IETF to try and, instigate that and have touch points. I'm not saying weekly, but every 3 months is way too long. And, for us vertically challenged people, I'd like, the microphones to be lowered a little bit. So.
Nancy can't do that.
This is Hank from the floor. There's a good example for like a role model here. The suit working group had an interim hackathon. That was really successful. It saved basically a IETF meeting, so to speak. A lot of insight was gained. A lot of IoT people with their new vendors that are really interested in how to deploy firmware were on site. And we gave new requirements, and it was really fruitful. So maybe this a offsite thing might help.
Well, the suit did it on site, like there was a.
That was in Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think Brett's right. Interim meetings. I mean, it's human nature. Unfortunately, they are very few people. I mean, myself included, it's hard to keep things moving if you're not touching base regularly. I agree with that. I think the one advantage Suit has is it's the new hot, sexy working group, as opposed to one that's been around for a while. So that always helps.
I would guess I would push back a little bit on that, is that they don't just have to be new, hot, and sexy in order to get people to work. They just have to be active.
Yeah.
And a lot of the groups, not just Zoot, but I mean, obviously some of the big ones, host these, interim, Plugfest hackathons on a very regular basis. Sometimes they're in person and sometimes they're virtual. And if you have a clear, list of things you're trying to accomplish, sometimes they can all be done virtual, and we have this cool technology like telepresence kind of stuff, WebEx stuff. We can, some of it can actually be fully done, and we can get together and talk and work through things. And okay, I've got this running, and
right.
Can it talk to your stuff? So I just think more
engagement.
Comment.
You'd like to see more engagement, right? All right. So the whole point of this was basically we're looking to do hackathon type of activity in the IETF 104 timeframe, we're looking to do 3 virtual interims between now and the next meeting. And with that, is there any other business? All right, well, with that, everybody have a lovely evening, and we will see you virtually on the week of the 10th.
IETF103 is done.
Oh, yeah, mostly.
Friday is a complete working day.
We still have meetings, what are you talking about?
I can go home. The experiment meetings, we have another 4-day IETF.
You didn't hear phone and sign.
Oh, yeah.
I felt so bad. Yeah, I mean, he actually followed procedures and scheduled signings on Friday, which.
Yeah, because the complete morning distinctive thing was just everybody would be there.
Yeah.
Also,
No, everybody.
Thank you.
tomorrow I have scheduled with CDDL writing, but yes.
Yeah.
I actually have working tomorrow. And I have some other meeting at 10. And I should know what that is. So should
So we'll see how the next virtual. Oh.
No, the problem is lightning and Thunderbird another thing again. So my schedule is gone. My schedule lightning and so you cannot schedule again. No. I remember. Everything needed it's not a different day. Oh, it was Eddie. I'm meeting with Eddie here. Yeah, no, I remember. No, we need that's very interesting. Oh, yeah, it's a different month.
I